Okay, it is Monday. It is after a feisty weekend here in the NFC North where the Detroit Lions lost, and now there's more conversation starting about Ben Johnson. And remaining in Detroit was a viable option from what we heard over the weekend for Ben Johnson while the Lions were still alive. True or untrue, these are the rumors that we heard. And now that they've fallen just 2 games shy of a Super Bowl berth, will he regard next year, this upcoming season, as another season of unfinished business and want to stay in Detroit for another season? Personally, I don't think so. But as one source with knowledge of the situation said on Sunday, there are, quote, a lot of moving parts, end quote, for Johnson. And it remains to be seen whether the disappointing finish to this season makes him more likely or less likely to return to the Lions for another run. And again, I'm not real confident in that happening. I think that Ben Johnson is all but gone at this point, assuming the performance in this last Saturday night's game did not ruin any opportunities for Ben Johnson. Now, with the Lions out, obviously Johnson is able to engage in now face-to-face interviews with the teams as soon as tomorrow. Still have the Bears, the Jaguars, the Raiders, but the Patriots are out. I mean, they've hired Mike Vrabel. There's really no reason for him to interview with the Patriots. I don't think that he's going to take some sort of an offensive coordinator position or anything else with another team. However, other teams could also interview Ben Johnson, which could be the Cowboys and or the Saints, which have not come up yet. But it could be an opportunity still waiting for Ben Johnson. But, Johnson was already interviewed by the Raiders. And quite honestly, he is the most sought after head coaching candidate right now for Vegas. Throughout the entire hiring cycle so far, that's what we're hearing. So the reports are that the Raiders are enamored, right? That's what we heard last week with Ben Johnson, and that the Raiders are the best fit for Ben Johnson. Again, more things being reported, but by Hondo Carpenter, the Raiders inside reporter, says that, and per his sources, say that Johnson, quote, is the guy to beat, end quote, for the head coaching position for the Vegas Raiders. Now, that being said, there has been some chatter about the Raiders owner, Mark Davis, being a poor owner, a cheap owner, cheapskate, and ostensibly cheap was the exact framed word there. Thinking that the Raiders will have to settle for less because he's not going to pony up the money to bring in Ben Johnson. Now, per Hondo Carpenter's reports, these concerns are absurd, and Johnson will likely command a pretty penny, but the Raiders are fully invested in going after their number one target if that's the case. Now, it has also been reported that Las Vegas seems confident that they will land Ben Johnson and that they are trying to bring in Lance Newmark. Now, Newmark is very familiar with Ben Johnson. He's very familiar with the entire system that's been run in Detroit. Even since the days early on when Johnson was brought aboard, Newmark was there for like 26 seasons. So bringing in Newmark as a general manager is a great fit. Obviously having the addition of Tom Brady in the front office helps, and I'm sure that's weighing on Johnson's mind. But according to these reports and rumors, bringing in Lance Newmark was the first step for the Raiders to show Ben Johnson that they're serious in finding somebody for Ben Johnson to be able to work with hand in hand that understands the process and building that first brick, right? That first layer is having your general manager and your head coach on the same page. Here's a quote from Carpenter about what the Raiders are willing to pay or potentially willing to pay. Not only are the Raiders, evidently willing to pay whatever it takes, these are some large numbers. So with regard to these reports, in a quote by Carpenter, he says, I have seen people saying it would probably take 6 years, $60 million fully guaranteed. I have had people quietly tell me for someone to get Ben Johnson, it would maybe be 6 years at $90 million, $15 million a year guaranteed. The exact answer I was given was, if Ben isn't the coach of the Raiders, the reason will have nothing to do with money. Money will be no objective for whomever the Raiders get. So there you go. The Raiders are willing to spend anything and everything to be able to bring in their guy if Ben Johnson is their guy, which all of the reports and the rumors are pointing to right now that Ben Johnson is heading to the Vegas Raiders. Now, when you look at the opportunity for the Raiders, I mean, offensively, they have the tight end, Brock Bowers, amazing season as a rookie. They have the wide receiver, Jacoby Myers, but really nothing else. Is that such a bad thing? I mean, obviously the Raiders have plenty of cap room. They can sign whomever they want in free agency. They'll be able to do a lot in the draft this season. I think they have 8 picks in this upcoming draft. But trying to convince some of these, other free agents to come to the Raiders, that could be the trick. That could be the issue that they're up against, at least for the first couple of seasons. Now, Ben Johnson coming from such an affluent, man, even saying that is crazy. Coming from Detroit, such an affluent franchise now in the NFL, and really setting the bar high and building a blueprint in Detroit that Ben's been a part of, that may bend that curve a little bit quicker, right? You might have some guys that are, 50-50 about going in, to join Ben over there as the head coach. But when you look at the program that Detroit has built, that may change, some of these players' minds. So trying to convince these guys, early could be difficult. But then again, if they look at the history and what's happened with Detroit, it may not be as difficult as some may think. Defensively, they have Max Crosby. They have a couple of other players, but I think that this really gives Ben Johnson a good, clean slate. New GM, new head coach. You install, all of the, pieces that you need for positional groups. And then as far as players go, this really gives Ben Johnson an easier opportunity to try to load this roster up with players that he sees fits his scheme offensively, and then finding the right defensive guy that can also mirror that same image. So Ben Johnson to the Raiders, it seems all but, a lock at this point. The majority of the reports and the rumors are stating, Mark Davis willing to spend whatever he wants, whatever he needs to lure Ben Johnson into Vegas. And as well with that, Ben Johnson seems to have already started, to assemble some pieces on the back end. If Lance Newmark is installed as a GM, that is a great fit for Ben Johnson. So at this point, I think Ben's all but gone and headed to Vegas. I know a lot of you Vegas fans have reached out over the last couple of weeks and sent me a ton of messages, ton of well wishes too after the loss on Saturday night. Really appreciate you guys. And hey, it's just on and up here for the Detroit Lions, but Ben Johnson likely to be a Raider here pretty soon. Wish you nothing but luck, Ben. We'll see you at some point, I'm sure, in the postseason.
You can do it!